To kick us off, I'd like to introduce Jackie Cowell, the Executive Director, Early Learning, New Hampshire. Jackie.
Thank you, Tom, and good morning, everybody. So today, my job is to talk to you a little bit about early childhood development. To be very brief, let you know how early child development happens, why it matters, what facilitates that development, and what derails that development. And then finally, what can we do with all that we've learned about that? And actually, today, I don't have to do that part. You're going to have a panel, and you're going to have Dr. Lynn Carrolley do that with you to talk about some terrific solutions. So we really believe that children are the bedrock of the Granite State. This logo here is Spark, New Hampshire. I'm up here today on behalf of Spark, New Hampshire, which is the governor-appointed Early Childhood Advisory Council for the state of New Hampshire. So let's talk a little bit about development. Here is, if you can see that, that's me when I was little. We all used to be little. And I just want to tell you, so when we're talking today, I want you to think about this all throughout this morning, that a child born today will graduate from high school in 2035. Okay, what will 2035 look like, right? I mean, I guess smartphones were invented about 10 years ago. What will that complex world be like? Many of the children, young children today, will hold jobs that haven't even been invented yet. So actually, when I showed this picture to my daughter, Samantha, who at the time was a teenager, she couldn't tell what that was in the background. I don't know if you can see that far, but that's a record player. She had no idea what that was. And then, unfortunately, she said, "And look, Mom, you've got the same haircut." So. All right, so let's see if the future prosperity of New Hampshire is really dependent on our ability to steward that next generation who will live, work, and lead in our state. And Governor Sununu was very eloquent on that topic. Again, we honestly believe that children are the bedrock of the Granite State. So what does develop? How does early childhood develop? Well, we talk about it in terms of the brain's architecture. So I'm going to read this to you. So like a house, the brain is built from the bottom up. Early experiences set the foundation for the architecture of the developing brain, establishing either a sturdy or a fragile base for all the learning, behavior, and health that follows. I'm now going to show you a quick 90-second video from the Harvard Center on the Developing Child exactly about this brain architecture, how it works, and how important it is to set that sturdy foundation early.
A child's experiences during the earliest years of life have a lasting impact on the architecture of the developing brain. Genes provide the basic blueprint, but experiences shape the process that determines whether a child's brain will provide a strong or weak foundation for all future learning, behavior, and health. During this important period of brain development, billions of brain cells called neurons send electrical signals to communicate with each other. These connections form circuits that become the basic foundation of brain architecture. Circuits and connections proliferate at a rapid pace and are reinforced through repeated use. Our experiences and environment dictate which circuits and connections get more use. Connections that are used more grow stronger and more permanent. Meanwhile, connections that are used less fade away through a normal process called pruning. Well-used circuits create lightning-fast pathways for neural signals to travel across regions of the brain. Simple circuits form first, providing a foundation for more complex circuits to build on later. Through this process, neurons form strong circuits and connections for emotions, motor skills, behavioral control, logic, language, and memory during the early critical period of development. With repeated use, these circuits become more efficient and connect to other areas of the brain more rapidly. While they originate in specific areas of the brain, the circuits are interconnected. You can't have one type of skill without the others to support it. Like building a house, everything is connected, and what comes first forms a foundation for all that comes later.
So this recent research in genomics, molecular biology, and neuroscience is pointing us to the fact of what facilitates early childhood development best is what we call serve and return relationships, sort of like a game of tennis or ping pong, that back and forth that happens between supportive adults in the children's life with the child. That helps develop their literacy, their numeracy, their essential life skills, their ability to focus, to concentrate, to problem solve, their curiosity, creativity, their perseverance. These are things that we know are so important throughout the course of their life, and as you'll hear later about the future workforce, really setting that sturdy foundation that we need. We are literally wired for connection, and making sure that those early experiences are there for those children to have that opportunity is what we want to make sure happens. So what does derail development? Something called toxic stress. You may have heard of that, you may not have heard of it. Toxic stress is different than regular stress. Regular stress can be good for you, but toxic stress is different. It's the chronic activation of the stress response system in the absence of a supportive adult to buffer it. So what's happening as the young child is developing is that cortisol and adrenaline are bathing the child's body and brain on an ongoing basis, literally changing the body and the brain. They're showing incredible results. It's not just that they may show up to school with learning disabilities or different behaviors. It actually affects their life course. So we're going to show another quick video from Harvard talking about toxic stress.
Learning to deal with stress is an important part of healthy development. When experiencing stress, the stress response system is activated. The body and brain go on alert. There's an adrenaline rush, increased heart rate, and an increase in stress hormone levels. When the stress is relieved after a short time, or a young child receives support from caring adults, the stress response winds down and the body quickly returns to normal. In severe situations, such as ongoing abuse and neglect, where there is no caring adult to act as a buffer against the stress response stays activated. Even when there is no apparent physical harm, the extended absence of response from adults can activate the stress response system. Constant activation of the stress response overloads developing systems, with serious, lifelong consequences for the child. This is known as toxic stress. Over time, this results in a stress response system set permanently on high alert. In the areas of the brain dedicated to learning and reasoning, the neural connections that comprise brain architecture are weaker and fewer in number. Science shows that the prolonged activation of stress hormones in early childhood can actually reduce neural connections in these important areas of the brain at just the time when they should be growing new ones. Toxic stress can be avoided if we ensure that the environments in which children grow and develop are nurturing, stable, and engaging.
So of course we are designed to have a fight or flight response system. When we are encountering a bear, for instance, in the woods, we're not going to sit and think a little bit. We're going to have impulse. We're going to move, fight or flight. And so what's happening, unfortunately, with children who experience toxic stress as they're developing is that fight, as it said, that fight or flight response is on permanent high alert. So they're sitting in a classroom. It's as if the bear is in the classroom with them. That's how it feels. So again, let's talk about what we can do to mitigate and ameliorate that. So it's innovation in the early years. You're going to hear about some solutions from the research from Dr. Cowell about some of those innovations. But what we know we need to do is to build strong foundations for healthy development. We need to invest in early experiences that maximize serve and return interactions and reduce toxic stress. You are going to hear about some of those examples. One thing I encourage you to do, Spark New Hampshire, its website is sparknh.org or .com, both work. You can take actions. We have an ability to go and say different actions that you can take. It's really important. Many of you around the room, I can point to a few of you, are ambassadors for Spark New Hampshire. You're setting up Chamber of Commerce meetings, school board meetings, Lions Club meetings, all sorts of ways, PTA time, so we can actually talk about this, what facilitates early child development, what derails it, and talks about those solutions on a local and community level, and we encourage you to do that with us. So please do go to sparknh.com and also take the pledge. There's a pledge there saying that, and we'll put your name right up there on the pledge, that you're willing to do that with us, and it'll make a big difference. So lastly, I just want to say, so you're hearing from Dr. Cowell today. Another economist who's turned his attention to the importance of the early years is Dr. James Heckman, a Nobel laureate in economic sciences, who reminds us the least expensive problem to fix is the one you prevent from happening in the first place. And so we're excited as well that WMUR-TV is partnering with Spark New Hampshire, thanks to many different sponsors. It's too short to name right now, that I can do that. But so WMUR.com, and then you go to an early childhood tab. You'll see it on the side. It'll give you some of these videos you've just seen. It'll give you some new articles, and they're showing some different spots. Eddie Edwards is here today. He's in a 10-second spot on MUR, and he's the chair of Juvenile Justice Task Force, talking about the link between early childhood and juvenile justice. But I also just want to briefly call out 3 champions who have been with us from the beginning. Some of you may know Tom Raffio, and he was the Business New Hampshire. He couldn't join us today. He would have been here. He was on the exchange yesterday, though. And he's always talking about that pay me now or pay me later. You're going to hear about that from the return on investment. He's been an amazing champion. And I also ask him to stand up. Steve Barba, would you stand up, Steve? He just said I was always cute. Steve was actually the one who planted the seed for today's meeting. He came to us at one point and told us about this return on investment study that he'd been learning about and was passionate about, and said, you need to get that in front of the New Hampshire Forum on the future. So thank you, Steve. And last but not least, I want to acknowledge another champion you're going to hear from some more today, and that's Fred Coker. And so, again, he's the co-founder of the New Hampshire Forum on the Future and the New Hampshire Coalition for Business and Education, and he has been just terrific. And we're so appreciative, Fred, for all that you're doing to raise your voice for young children, and thank you, Fred.